2015-2016 budget hearing. May I have a roll call vote, please, Madam Clerk?
Mrs. Carling?
Aye.
Mr. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Ms. Davis? Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Or Mr. Albus.
Yes, sir.
He's at the podium.
Mr. Albus is ready to go, and he will be calling on me or us at some point in the course of the budget hearing as well.
Good evening. State statute requires that a public hearing be held on the budget prior to adoption to allow any member of the public an opportunity to comment on the proposed spending plan. We went over in more detail in July the proposed budget, so tonight's going to be a very high-level review, but then there will be an opportunity for public comment. Then later in the agenda, under the board action item, would be a time for the board questions or comments on the spending plan. Just a brief review. We'll go over the legal requirements for a budget adoption, touch base on the financial condition of the district, talk about strategic initiative highlights. When we did this in July, we talked about them as budget highlights, but in subsequent conversations, we're going to try and tie it to the milestones of the strategic plan. Take a look at the projected revenues and expenses, and then conclude our presentation and open the floor for public comment. The legal requirements include that the budget must be adopted by the end of our first quarter. So in school districts, because we run from July 1 to June 30th, the end of the first quarter is at the end of September. Prior to adoption, the budget must be on public display for at least 30 days. Our budget went on public display, I believe, on July 15th, so we've surpassed the 30-day requirement. At the July meeting, we scheduled tonight as the date and time for a public hearing on the budget, and I believe on July 17th, we published a notice in the newspaper notifying the public about the hearing tonight. In your packet under the financial reports, this is a screenshot of one of the overviews in there. And this shows our financial condition as of June 30th, 2015. And do I have a laser on this? Yes. Right down here is our fund balance, excluding our capital projects fund. And our capital projects fund goes up and down, and the timing of when revenues come in and when we spend things out can really skew these numbers, so I tend to leave that off of this look. But one of the measures we have of how we're doing financially is to look at our fund balance, and this is adjusted for early taxes, and compare it to our expenditures. So if I divide the fund balance by the expenditures, we're at about 17.5%. Now the board has a fund balance policy where we seek to maintain a balance of 10%. So we're doing well. We're above that. And as we talked about in July, there were some timing issues on some things. We underspent salaries last year, and that all contributes to this. So some years it's a little higher than we anticipate. Some years it's a little bit lower. Based on the figures shown on the screen and the current fund balance, it's anticipated this will drop to about 15% by the end of this fiscal year, as expenditures are expected to exceed revenues. But again, even at 15%, we're still well above our target balance. Even though tonight, I don't think that's me. Even though tonight is about the current year spending plan, I do think it's important to mention that we do not see this as we talk about expenses exceeding revenues as the beginning of a structural deficit. When we drill down and look at the budget and look at where we're spending our money, I think it makes a lot of sense. But we're starting the year off in a very good financial position.
One of the things that we wanted to point out in the course of looking at the budget is how does this link to things that we are trying to accomplish as an organization? How does it relate to the milestones, the mission, the vision, and the milestones? And there are a number of things that we're directing resources and time towards. So I've bunched milestones 1, 2, and 3. That's achievement, instruction, and assessment all together. So one of these things is the new robotics and makerspace. So this is a physical plant thing. It's also related to instruction. This is a space in what used to be the study hall. One of the interesting things that happened was as we created, and I speak we as in the entire staff, we created places for students to go to get help on math or writing. One of the interesting things that happened was that study halls began to slowly fade away because the students were somewhere else. So that space in the basement that was a study hall had diminished need for that. And so there's now going to be a robotics and a maker space. So it's a tinkering space, both for art and for academics. Leading Edge is one of the major things, a seamless rollout on that. Congratulations to Mr. DuBose and all the people associated with that. We put 1,200 new computers into students' hands, and everybody turned them on, and that went seamlessly. So 3 additional grade levels for that. Also, we have an implementation of different software programs designed to improve instruction. One of those is Atlas Rubicon. That is a type of software to capture curriculum and to map curriculum. What are kids learning? What do we expect kids to be able to know and or do by the end of their time with us? Another one is the CSCI. That's the Student Social Emotional Survey. We'll do that annually with students and with staff, and biennially with parents. We've got a benchmark on those things, and so we'll spend both time and money on that. And finally, a product called Illuminate, which is something that will help us track students that are struggling, provide data on their achievement, and help our teams figure out how they keep the student in a general ed setting without sending them down the hall to other areas, but keep the help inside the regular classroom. Also, with the faculty, we have a lot of late starts in professional development for training for a variety of initiatives. Some of those things are related to Atlas Rubicon, and others are things that they're working on curricularly. With our partnership milestone, we have a community mentorship. These are programs where we want more and more kids. As we look at the milestones, one of the things that we see there is greater and greater personalization, and that looks like placing kids in positions with people in the community and also with our staff where they explore things that they are interested in. One of our parents at our recent community or our education committee meeting said that senior year, that pairing with an adult in the building and also an internship outside the building was one of the most important things for her child for the entire year and her entire K-12 experience. So these outreach programs can connect kids with internship possibilities. One of those things you'll hear about very soon is called Open Doors. We hear from a number of different parents this is the best thing that their kid did in the most recent year. We spent a lot of time on summer curriculum development, teachers coming into the building and also working on their own, developing new kinds of curricula. We have a number of new courses this year. With the environment, as I mentioned before, the makerspace, another thing, classroom furniture. You'll see some of that. I have a video later on in the superintendent's report where you'll see how different seating arrangements actually influence how kids learn. And then we've got a number of different infrastructure improvements, things maybe less exciting but nonetheless important related to asphalt and storage and in roofing around the building. So a number of different investments that we are making that link to our milestones, and we're driving at that, and there'll be more of this in the superintendent's report as well. Thank you.
There are no changes to the revenues that we presented at the July meeting at this point, largely because there's been no action out of Springfield as to changes that would impact our funding. As a reminder, as we go over the revenues and expenses, We did assume in this budget that we'd only receive 3 state categorical payments, not 4. Typically, we get 4 payments from the state in a year. Last year, we received 3. The word that we get out of Springfield is don't expect any more than that this coming year. So we've brought that down in the budget. We also, on the expense side, assume that there will be a pension cost shift, and we're assuming 0.5%. Now, there's no legislation that I know of yet that will capture that. It may not come in that form. That's about an $80,000 to $100,000 assumption that we've built in, but we do think something will come out of Springfield that will impact us. So between the two, between the reduced categorical and the pension cost shift, we're projecting that we'll capture whatever that is when it takes its final form. At this point in time, there are no changes to the expense side either. We do monitor staffing, as it is by far our largest expense. At the present, we're slightly up in staffing due to class selection and special education, but not enough, in our opinion, to warrant an adjustment because there are just simply too many variables. As we do with many aspects of the budget, we'll monitor that during the course of the year. We could be right on track with expenditures, and if revenues are coming in short, then we'll look for ways to mitigate that loss, or vice versa. So, again, with no change out of Springfield, and from what we see as we've hired people and we've actually got the year underway, we're not recommending any changes. You can see at the bottom, then that creates a difference between revenues and expenses of almost $700,000. When we add in our capital projects budget, and the reason, again, I segregate this out is because down here, we're bringing in $275,000 to capital projects, but we're going to spend $565,000 in part because we're still spending down some bond proceeds that we issued a couple of years ago. So to roll them all into one number, I think kind of skews it a little bit. So in our operating funds, it's about $700,000, another $290,000 in capital projects. So in the aggregate, we're down about $986,000 from projected revenues. Again, looking forward, we don't see this as the beginning of a structural deficit. We have a lot of capital equipment initiatives in this. The leading edge alone, I think, on the laptops is just north of $600,000. We have probably another $100,000 in O&M capital equipment. So that starts to add up pretty quick. Those are not annual reoccurring expenses. So at this point in time, I'd open the floor, or I'd recommend that you open the floor to anybody from the public who would like to comment on the proposed budget. And at the conclusion of the public comment section, that would then close the hearing, and then this item will come up later in your agenda under an action item. Thank you.
Is there any member of the public who would like to address the board? Expand on
What you included in the budget, your anticipation of what might happen in Springfield and how you factored it into the budget without having a crystal ball.
There's been a lot of talk out of Springfield about a 2-year property tax freeze. But if you stop and think about it for a moment, that does nothing to solve the state's problems, because those are all local taxes that will impact local school districts and local municipalities. So to this point in time, I don't think we've seen a comprehensive plan or a working solution coming out of there. Unless the game plan is to freeze local taxes and then fill that gap with new state taxes. So I'm speaking for me as an individual. Stability is a good thing. Being in a district, there's a double-edged sword where we rely so much on property taxes that hurts when you write the check as a homeowner. But we also have stability. A couple of years ago when the economy crashed and the state got 3 and 4 payments behind to school districts, there were districts that were owed multiple millions of dollars. We get very little money from Springfield because of the property tax. I think what we would like as an administration and for planning purposes is just to know what the plan is so that we can make adjustments accordingly going forward. If there's stopgap measures, that gets very hard for us to plan because we don't know what's coming. So something comprehensive that we know, at least we know what playing field we're on, is what I would think. But we have not, the board is a governing body, I don't think has had a debate and advocated at this juncture for a solution on this. Question, if not, though, I'm more than happy to talk to you after the meeting or set up time.
I'll add to that, sir. One of the things that I would hope for, both as a resident and also as a superintendent, would be that Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, and Knollwood taxes stay local and are spent locally. One of the plans could be to send our dollars to Springfield in the hope that they would be redistributed back to us. I think that would diminish your local authority, your local school board's authority over the local dollars, and would also increase, which would be a perilous thing to enter into, increase Springfield's authority.
A second?
Second.
May I have a voice vote? All in favor, or do you need a roll call? Roll call vote?
Aye.
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 Aye. Budget hearing adjourned. For the first time in history, we're starting the board meeting on time, or actually 2 minutes early. So we're still in the regular meeting, Madam Clerk? We could just keep going? I'd like to start out with some brief comments. I've always been envious of the start of the school year. I wish I could have the same newness and freshness in my professional life that we have here. Every year, we have a blank slate and a real chance to do things differently and better. We have lots of business tonight, including the swearing in of our new board member. But I just want to share with you what I want to do better. I want to communicate more effectively. And that doesn't mean saying more, it means listening more and listening more effectively. And I want all of us to think about every kid, not just groups of students. I want us to be sure that every Lake Forest High School student can be who they are. I've heard that a lot in various forums in my first 12 months on the board, and I heard it loudly from Dr. Holland during our time together. I want to be sure we're thinking about every kid all the time. Now the business. Dave Schreiber, as you know, moved to Colorado over the summer, and we put out the word to replace him. We're very lucky in this community that we have a large number of qualified people with varied, impressive skills. You made our job hard, but we feel like we found an outstanding candidate in Miss Sally Davis. Sally is an attorney and 13-year Lake Bluff resident. She's curious, thoughtful, and passionate about education. Sally works for S.C. Johnson and has a sophomore son at the high school. We needed Sally as a full-fledged board member at our closed session before the budget hearing, so we're going to do this again for televised purposes right now, if you don't mind.
so you know.
Someone took away Sally's sheet.
It's okay.
So you're gonna have to remember. I, Sally Davis,
I, Sally Davis,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
of member of the Board of Education of Lake Forest High School, District Number 115,
of member of the Board of Education of Lake Forest District High School, District 115,
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the laws of the State of Illinois,
and the laws of the State of Illinois,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
I further swear that I shall respect taxpayers' interests
I further swear that I will respect taxpayers' interests
by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion,
I shall encourage and respect the
free expression,
free expression of opinion
by my fellow board members
by my fellow board members
and others who seek a hearing before the board,
and others who seek a hearing before the board,
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual,
I shall recognize that no board member has legal authority as an individual,
and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting.
and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting.
And I shall abide by majority decisions of the board
And I shall abide by majority decisions of the board
while retaining the right to seek changes
while retaining the right to seek changes
in such decisions
in such decisions
through ethical and constructive channels.
through ethical and constructive channels.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Simic, will you give the superintendent's report, please?
Yes, sir. We have a number of different parts to that this go around, beginning of the school year. I'd like to hand off right at the beginning to Dr. Holland.
So we have here tonight Jake Gerber, who is our president of the council, and Joe Barrera, who's our vice president, and Derek Lasar is welcome.
Hi, my name is Jake Derberg. I'm the student council president of the 2015-2016 school year. And I just want to give a little bit of background about myself. So I've been involved in countless clubs at the schools in 2 sports, swimming and baseball. I will actually be the captain of our varsity baseball team this year. And then my most committed club, student council. I've been on student council for the past 3 years. I've been vice president for the past 2. So I know the ins and outs of student council, and also, being on multiple clubs, I know kind of how the school works. And my leadership experience is one of my is my main qualifying. My main quality that I feel will help me be an effective student council president. Also, my work ethic. I have to get everything done. I'm not a procrastinator, and I think that will help me very much. Also, communication I think is key. I've been on the debate team for the past 3 years, and so public speaking is no new thing to me. And with student council being such a large group, we've created a Facebook group. Each class has their own Facebook group, and this is to get important updates about what's going on in student council and also the school. And then also we have an exec group chat. So everyone who is running each committee from student council is aware and up to date on everything that's happening. And I want to be the student council president because I really want to lead the student body. I think student council has to have a face, and I'm ready to be that face. And I want to continue the school events and also our partner schools and fundraising. And above all, I think that all the students have a valuable voice, and I'm here to give it to you guys. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jill Barrera, and I'm Student Council Vice President, so I'm Jake's, right-hand woman. It's a funny story. I never had an interest in student council until my junior year when I realized like I really wanted to get more involved with the school and make a bigger difference than I knew I could make. So I applied junior year and was elected as a cabinet member. I never thought I would really speak up in meetings. I just thought I would kind of ride the wave and see what happened. And I ended up being appointed as head of one of the prom committees. So I handled the t-shirt. I ended up really, really liking it. And our student council advisor, Ms. Van Skyok, who's fabulous, she encouraged me to run for an executive position. I was thinking maybe like treasurer or secretary. But then Jake and I had talked about the possibility of me running as his vice president. And as election time came around, I was elected vice president. So that's a huge accomplishment for me, and I'm really excited for the year ahead with everything. I've been a varsity cheerleader all 4 years. I'll be finishing out my senior year as captain of the team. Go Scouts. I also am a big part of a club called Scout Nation, which is more partnered with the Boosters, but it's basically, the spirit club that handles all athletic events and things like that, and just tries to bring like themes and more awareness to the games and activities that come along with that. And Scout Nation is probably my biggest link to student council. I try to really merge the two clubs and make them kind of a driving force within the school and make sure that they are working together because they do work on such similar things. So spirit is kind of my area. I'm also the Link Crew Student Commissioner, which for those of you who don't know is the freshman orientation, kind of the thing that handles all of that. And I'm also a Wellness for Life teacher's assistant, which is a freshman health class. So I try to kind of get my face out to the underclassmen and try to encourage them to get involved and all things of that nature. And I'm also on the executive board of Student to Student, which is the club that welcomes all the new kids. So whether they're transfer over the summer or they come mid-year, just to make sure that they have a student ambassador assigned to them to make sure that they're comfortable with their transition to Lake Forest High School. So yeah.
So I'm going to be giving just a couple in-school updates. The school year started about 2 weeks ago, and there's a lot of school spirit from freshmen all the way up to seniors. Everyone's really excited for the upcoming school year, and you can tell by, all the music in the commons and, hanging out and having a good time. We also run by our senior class president, Nicolette Stern, is senior theme Thursdays. So every Thursday, the seniors as a whole pick a theme to do. Last week was Beach Day, so we all came in, beach attire. So again, to keep, kind of the overall well-being of our students, this is a big one. And again, a lot of school spirit, so there's been very good attendance at both our first home game for football and the away game, surprisingly all the way up in Niles. And so everyone's really excited about that. We're winning 2-0, so that's great. And again, there's just such a positive vibe, and I think Dr. Holland has been very supportive of that and really encouraging all the students to, really want to be at the school. And also, birthdays on the board are a huge hit. I don't know if you guys have seen, but when you walk into the front of the doors, everyone's birthday for that week is listed, and that is all Dr. Holland. And all the kids are super excited about that and love seeing all the birthdays up there. So in terms of student council, we have 90-plus kids on student council, and that's because, we want to give everyone a chance to be a part of student council because it's a great opportunity to get involved not only with service events but also in school opportunities. And everyone will be held accountable for attendance and participation. And if you're not pulling your weight and you're not at the meetings, then you will be given a notice and potentially dropped from student council if you are missed a bunch of meetings or you're not pulling your weight, like I said. And then we've had 2 meetings already as a whole to discuss the expectations and also the introduction to the year. And we are also starting to plan homecoming, which Jill will talk about a little bit later, which is September 26th is the dance, and then the 25th is the football game. And also we have a new way to kind of touch base with every student at the school. So 2 times a month, every other Thursday, representatives from student council will be going to each homeroom during the 3rd period class to hear from the students on the needs, wants, and suggestions from them to make this environment the best it can be. We're still working out the logistics on that, so hopefully we'll have more of an update at the next board meeting. And also, we want to continue working on healthier cafeteria options, like we started last year in the snack shop and vending machines. So hopefully this year we can really get that into motion. And also, our partner school, Greenwood Elementary, it's a school up in Waukegan who we've been working with and fundraising for the past year. So the money we raised last year, which was $8,000, we used to refurnish their library at the school with new bookshelves. And so once the bookshelves arrive, student council members will be going over there to put the books on the shelves and also have kind of a service day and read to all the kids. And then Jill's going to talk about homecoming.
All right, so in terms of homecoming, we are really getting the ball rolling. We've been having tons of meetings and tons of individual committee selections and things like that. Last year, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but we had a hashtag for people to put on their Facebook posts or their Instagram pictures, things like that, just in terms of marketing. Last year, it was Do It for HOCO, and this year, it's going to be Holla for HOCO. We're just trying to have some fun with that. The pep rally is going to be the Friday before homecoming week. So we did it like that last year, and we found that it worked really well. It kind of pumped the students up. You know, we got to see what we're going to be wearing for Spirit Week, talk about all the individual logistics of the next week. And so that's going to be September 18th during school. And then we are going to have our 3rd annual window painting. So I'm sure you guys are familiar. If you've passed through town during homecoming week, you've seen all the individual teams painting their windows. And one thing we're working on for that is just to get more local businesses involved, try to get everyone in town to just be spirited and have fun with homecoming week. On September 21st, it will be the kickoff to Spirit Week. So we're doing it a little bit differently this year, and senior class has planned a fabulous event for that Monday. In the past, we've done themes like, last year was neon for the theme. But this year, our theme is going to be tie-dye, and we've been working on planning this event on that Monday. So we'll be selling blank white t-shirts the week before homecoming, and they'll have like a black logo, Lake Forest High School, things like that, your graduation year on the back. But that Monday on the front lawn, we're going to have an event sponsored by Student Council where each class will be tie-dyeing their shirt. So we're going to have, you know, a DJ and music and possibly like some treats and food, and just like really promote emotional wellness, have it, you know, everyone during their lunch period just come together, just kick off homecoming week really strong. So the underclassmen will be tie-dyeing in shades of gold, and then the upperclassmen will be tie-dyeing in shades of blue. So when you look up at the student section at the game, it'll be like blue, gold, perfectly separated, and it's supposed to gonna look really cool. And it'll be with the help of some local youth groups and probably Croya. And then Friday the 25th, before the varsity football game, we're working on another event which we're really excited about, and it's going to be our first ever kickoff cookout. So what we're doing is in the area right next to the building. So if the football field is here, then that grass area next to the building at the gym. We're going to be having, you know, food. We're going to be handing out Scouts gear. There will be a DJ, face painting, and we are so excited. It's going to be from 6 to 7 o'clock, and something that's going to make this event really special is the staff participation. So Student Council will be personally inviting each staff member to come and attend and just kind of bond with the kids and have a really fun time, and we're really, really excited for that. So the kickoff cookout, that's what we're calling it. And then the dance is going to be that Saturday, so the day after, September 26th, and it will be from 7 to 10 o'clock. You can come with a date, a group, or just come by yourself. We just want everyone there. We're going to take half the money we raise and donate it to a local cause. So what we were thinking this year is probably in terms of like, I don't know if you guys heard about the cheerleader and her family that was killed in a car accident up in Grays Lake. We're thinking about donating some money to her, or maybe the cop that was shot down about a week ago. We're thinking about that. But nothing is set in stone yet in terms of what we're donating to. We just know we want to keep the donations local this year. Yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of homecoming.
So lastly, our goals for this year. We've been big on service in the past, and we want to keep the service obviously for this year, but we want to focus on making decisions on school, such as, you know, student events, emotional wellness days. We really want the students to come to school and feel supported. We want LFHS to feel like a second home to every student. And now we'd like to open it up for any questions that you guys have. Thank you very much.
I'm very happy to see that, Jake, you brought your fan club, and Jill, you brought your enthusiasm, which I don't know if that's ever not with you here. So it's great. So you're going to be here on a regular basis, is that right? Great. I look forward to it. Thank you.
I do have one question. Yeah, I've been at the school and I've seen the birthday board, and I've seen everybody thinks it's really cool. What about the kids with birthdays in the summer?
I'll respond to that. There's been a suggestion, actually the idea came from Scott Gilbert, one of our teachers, who I met on the opening days of school, and he mentioned that it's something that he's been wanting to do and try out, and so I put it in place based on his recommendation. That's been one of the suggestions that came up regarding the summer, maybe the first day back to have birthdays of students that occurred over the summer on the board, but the board actually started as a result of a recommendation, a great suggestion from a teacher, but we'll definitely do that in the future.
One other comment. I sit on the chamber, the Lake Bluff, Lake Forest Chamber of Commerce, and one of the best things that you guys did, I think it was with Mr. Rogers, last year, I think it was, he brought back the window painting downtown, and that is really, really a great thing to see. It energizes the whole town, and it's really popular. I've heard it many, many, many times, so I'm really glad to hear that you're going to continue doing that. Okay, Dr. Holland, anything else?
Yes, so a couple things. We are off to a great start. There's a ton of school spirit in the building. It's been great engaging with the students where they are, spending a lot of time in classrooms and getting to know students there in the instructional environment as well. Been to a couple student council meetings so far, and the room's packed. It seems well over 90 students every meeting so far, and the students are happy to be back and engage and have really served as great ambassadors for the school so far. We just finished up our update on the strategic plan, and so our leadership team is beginning to unpack the goals for the year and really lay out what they mean in terms of everyone's sphere of influence in the building. And a part of that, part of our goals are around academic support, and this year we have a college resource center that has launched where students can stop by for help with their college apps and get questions answered and seek advice from our school counselors during the lunch periods. We launched an ELL program to make sure that we're serving all of our students, as was mentioned. But we have a growing population of students who are learning English or for which English is, or have English as a second language. And so our support includes a class, but also push-in supports for students in their regular academic classes, because oftentimes teachers benefit from that support as well as students as they're engaged in this space. As many people know, we have a school day committee that has formed. We have 20 faculty members, 18 faculty members, including 2 of our LFEA presidents, president and co-president, and we have 12 administrators on that school day committee. The first meeting is September 10th, so there's a lot of questions around when we're meeting. We have not met yet, and our first meeting will be on September 10th. We're looking forward to getting that work underway, and we'll definitely make sure that we're reporting back here as well as other places regarding that. We have peer tutoring. We revised our structure for peer tutors this year. Frank Lesniak, one of our deans, and he's a pivotal administrator in a lot of our RTI work, has relaunched our peer tutoring. And we have a lot of students that went through training to be peer tutors, and they're now identified to help tutor students throughout the day in various content areas. That's probably it for now, actually, one more thing. We have a standing evaluation committee. Part of our work this year is to come up with an evaluation model and rubrics to implement next year for teachers that embed student growth. And so we're busy working on that as well. I will say that having visited a lot of classes so far, there are a lot of awesome things happening in our classrooms. Our teachers are taking risks with students. Students are taking risks, and they're engaging in a lot of important work, whether it's around grading structures, exposing kids to multiple perspectives and across all content areas, embedding some of the executive function work. Really great work is happening, and I just want to say that it's been a great start. Honored to be here, and looking forward to weeks ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so part 2. Ready?
Just press the start button.
Physics and AP Physics here at Lake Forest High School. And
so what I wanted to show you is a number of videos. Steve Douglas put this together. You can see a number of different snippets from around the school, and this is all very intentional. What I want you to be looking for in the course of this is who's doing the work, who's busy. Is it the students that are doing the work? Is the adult that's doing the work? One of the most difficult changes for schools since all of us went to school was the shift away from a very teacher-centric classroom to a very student-centric classroom.
And what we have over here is we have an introductory activity that we do with all of the CP and intro level physics classes at the beginning of the year called the egg drop. Even though they don't know any physics, we have them try to construct a device out of toothpicks and glue to protect an egg from a 25-foot fall onto concrete. Their goal is to do it again at the end of the first semester after they've learned some physics, and then they have to try and do better.
Okay, so one of the important things here is this is like the final exam in a lot of ways, given on the first day. It doesn't work. And then they go back. They know nothing about why it doesn't work, and then they learn, and then they do it again later on, and now they see, this is why this works. This is a form of what is called formative assessment. I try something, I see what I know, I see what I don't know, and then now I know what I need to learn, is what this is supposed to underline. Okay, here, look at the student affect here, okay? And what you want to look for here is, as this rolls, how much kid lean-in is going on.
I'm Austin Scott. I'm an English teacher here at the high school. Today I'm working with freshman students in our interdisciplinary honors class with a tutorial of some of the Chrome apps that they're going to use over the course of the year in our class. They're working with JS Online, they're working with Google Maps, they're embedding videos, links, copying text, copying documents, all the different stuff that they're going to have to do over the course of the year. We do it in this sort of amazing race tour at the beginning of the year to help get them acclimated with the Chromebook and with technology as a whole and as a part of the classroom.
So the kids are spread out all over the place, and that's made possible by a very good teacher and also by a lesson plan that differentiates how kids are able to access things. So one of the things that what happened when we were in school, there was one on-ramp. If you think of this as a metaphor that learning is the expressway, there was one on-ramp, and that was the teacher. There was a teacher writing on a blackboard and the students copying down, trying to get as many on-ramps as possible, and you'll see another example of that in a minute. And then also at the end of that process, what you want to see is a lot of different off-ramps. How am I allowed to represent my learning? It doesn't have to be a written essay, a handwritten essay. It could be a video. It could be any number of different things where kids can represent their learning.
Using these devices and using the computer helps these students express themselves creatively in a lot of ways, through videos, through pictures, through different apps that may have not been available to them in years past. They're getting acclimated with right away, so we don't have to take the time during the year to explain these things and waste that instructional time that we covet.
You can also see two of the resources that we have employed. On the left is Laura Gregg. She's one of our tech support folks, and later on you'll see another guy, Corey, he's a bearded guy. They're helping individual kids work on individual things that they're interested in.
I'm Ariel Lamvik, and I teach Latin, and I needed to find a way to get lessons out to my students when they were absent. So I paired up, literally, with Jimmy Giuliano and got this Bluetooth wireless microphone set up in my room. I started recording my smartboard lessons and sending them out via Google. I shared them with my students, and hi, Anan. When they came back from their tournaments or their college visits, they were all ready to go.
Recall to me the causes.
Why not record the lessons every single day? Sort of like a double classroom, like an extra way for them to review the information. So it's going to work great for anyone who needs it. I'm super pleased. And Jimmy found it for me.
Again, look at the seating arrangement. A couple key elements here. The flipped classroom. Flipping means I get to work on it at home the way that we all learned. We did the hardest problems at home. And the way this is working is we are doing the hardest problems where we have support. We go home, learn a concept, a new concept, and then in class, that's where you work on the problems.
I'm Becca Schwartz, and this is a college algebra trig class. It's juniors and seniors, and they're working on the flipped classroom, so most of the time is spent working on practice problems, and if they get ahead, they can watch their video on their Chromebook. Also this year we've started Google Groups, so if they ever have questions outside of the classroom, they can post in their Google group. Everyone will discuss amongst themselves. I also get an email alert if somebody posts in the Google group, which means if none of their classmates respond, at least I know that someone has a question and I can get back to them. So it's a good way to get them talking about math outside of the classroom.
Number 2.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I like sharing what I love to do with others. I want to help you guys go through every step of the process. In the end, create a video that you can say, I made that, I learned a lot, and I'm really proud of it.
And I think that the TA program in this classroom offers a unique opportunity to build a different kind of connection than a traditional one, because it takes a lot of pressure off of the teacher and gives a lot more of the influence of the class to the students and allows them to build off of each other and grow.
I think the TA program is something that's really awesome and very collaborative between all the students and Mr. Douglas, the teacher. I think that TAs work really well together and with the students to be able to make really great pieces and make sure that everything runs smoothly, but also great ideas are formed and makes really great products.
So again, other ways that kids can represent their learning. So the TAs work with other kids, other teachers, and finding ways for kids to explore different ways for them to represent their learning. And I wanted to link back to the strategic plan here real quickly, an update on that. So this is our one-year strategic plan. We also have a longer-range strategic plan, but I wanted to give an update on the major things that we're going to be working on. Some of these will be things that you have heard a number of times already. What Mr. Markison mentioned before, the biggest challenge that we have, and we do a great job, schools tend to do a great job with many kids or most kids. The toughest word in these core values, in my opinion, is the first word, every. It's every single kid, whatever every single student needs, and the focus on each of our kids. And the other really difficult word in here is in the third line, including the willingness to take risks and learn from mistakes. High schools are the most risk-averse places, and the higher achieving you are, the more risk-averse you become. And there's all sorts of social and academic consequences for trying something and not being successful. Those are two really challenging things for us. So some of the things that we're going to be doing this year are they're all connected. Everything that we're going to be working on is connected to our milestones. These are the major ambitions that we have, and I broke these into 1, 2, 3, those are the first three because they're very interlinked, and want to talk about some of the significant strategic initiatives. The first of those being a guaranteed and viable curriculum, capturing our curriculum. What do we want kids to learn? What do we want them to be able to know and or do by the end of their time with us? Mastering essential content and skills. Mentioned the second bullet point again, the CSCI, that's our acronym for our social emotional well-being. We're looking at two different things there, the social emotional security of students, social and civic learning, it's all very interconnected, and also leadership. Those were the two areas that jumped out at us on our initial benchmark that we took last year. Developing a community mentorship program, I mentioned that earlier in Mr. Albus's report on the budget. Improving the access and options for academic support. It's one of the things I'd give Dr. Holland a great deal of credit for already, is coming in and diagnosing what our students are interested in, what do they need, and those types of supports that they're looking for. One of those is a ACT preparation program. We've put that, we, meaning she and her team, have put that into place already. This is very much driven by student desires. And another thing, you'll be hearing more and more about the various supports that they have across the building as we go throughout the course of the year. Expanding access and opportunities for students to take the most appropriate, challenging courses. We've talked a lot about how many more kids are taking our AP courses and being successful with those. Those AP courses have a new significance in this state because about a month ago, the legislature passed, both chambers and the governor signed a bill that give students full credit for a 3, a 4, or a 5. These are in-state universities in the state of Illinois, 3, 4, or 5. You get full credit for that at any university in our state. That's a big deal, and that means money in parents' pockets and also a lot of flexibility for students. One of the things we haven't talked about with this bullet as much, because it is harder to see, is how many kids are leveling up, how many kids are dropping down. We have kids doing that in both directions that we see as being important. But for some kids, being in a regular college preparatory course is the best and most challenging place they can be. And we want to have kids taking the most appropriate and a challenging course for them, wherever that might be and whatever that might be. The Leading Edge Initiative, again, because it's gone by so smoothly, we think, how hard is it to put 1,200 computers in a school and have it go? We had a Star Wars experience in District 67. I don't know if you remember when they went to light speed and everything went whoop, 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 and it didn't happen. That's what happened on day one when they fired up all their computers because they hadn't put enough yeah, like Cornelia said, IP addresses in. We didn't have enough access points for them to get on. We're also, one of the very challenging things, integrating student growth into teacher evaluations. This is an enormous undertaking, incredibly complex. Dr. Wilcox spent all last year, 5 entire days, working with staff from both districts on that, just getting them ready for piloting that this year. In terms of milestones, talent is another significant one. Major initiatives there. A research-based professional practice rubric for use in teacher evaluations. Dr. Wilcox mentioned that earlier. That sounds like not that hard to do. It is very difficult to select an evaluation tool and then implement that. Timely, relevant professional development. That's an ongoing task for us. And providing time through late starts and other things for adults to collaborate and co-plan. And that time, one of the things we learned from organizations like Google and Netflix, that time that doesn't look like active learning time is sometimes very, very valuable time. So they have to have time together. Another thing, creating hiring procedures for use across the district so there's commonality of how we hire. This is something that I did in my last district. Dr. Wilcox did it in District 67 last year, and this year we're going to be doing that in 115. And our partnerships, increasing the accurate, timely, and transparent communications, particularly promoting the mission and vision milestones. Been talking about this everywhere I've been all summer long, at Spirit meetings, in every single meeting that I have, whether it's 115 or 67, APT, and so on. Just spoke there this past week, but talking about that constantly and openly. In environment, we're going to be talking about a new schedule this year. The new school day schedule is one of the most tangible things related to our Milestone 6, reimagining our learning spaces, places, time, and tools, and also our technology. Obviously, the one-to-one would fit into this as well. So these are some, but not all, of the major initiatives that we're pursuing this year. There's a great deal of work going on. Give Dr. Holland a great deal of credit in getting us off to such a positive start, but we'll be reporting on this on an ongoing basis. All of this will be on the web, just like last year's strategic plan will be on the web. It's in an accordion form, so you can expand it out and see whatever parts you want to see and drill down into it. This year's version will be the 15-16 version, so each year we will add another year to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple just to really kind of illustrate, I think, your point from the beginning. You know, we do a lot of exciting things at Lake Forest High School, and the community is involved in a tremendous amount of it, whether it's, you know, Knollwood, Lake Bluff, Lake Forest, actively involved in helping us do better, pointing out areas that we probably don't do as well as we should. And I think that's something that we need to be a little more courageous about. We've talked about as a board a lot, and Reese, you touched on it when we talk about, you know, our goal is to support all our kids, not just certain groups, not just high performers, not just special needs, but it's all of our kids, which is an incredibly difficult thing to accomplish. We spent a lot of time a year ago doing mission, vision, goals, which really anchored in that. Emotional wellness is a big part of that. We've got an exciting opportunity together as teachers, administrators, to develop a new school workday or school day, or however we want to define it, which I think is exciting. My point is, we can't be afraid to talk about the things we don't do well, right? We'll be the first to boast ACT scores, or we'll be the first to talk about how high performing our kids are. But we aren't very good at identifying areas where we fall short or where we've neglected certain groups. And I'd like to see us as a group and as a team start to think about that. We're not going to solve that in a week, and you're not going to hear us, you know, with results at the next board meeting. But I think it's something, it's a shift around communication, Reese, as I think you talked about at the top of the meeting, where we need to get better at that. We need to communicate to the communities and to the parents areas where we aren't really proud of ourselves in terms of what we're delivering, and constantly try to work at that. Easier said than done. It's clearly an area that I think we're all going to learn as we go, kind of a whole learn and apply process. But I think we owe it to the community. I think we owe it as kind of you know, our work product as a board in terms of what we want to deliver and what we want to stand for. And I think it's a great opportunity for us as we go forward throughout the year.
That concludes the superintendent's report.
That's it. Very good. Thank you.
I was going to say I don't recognize that handsome gentleman in the crowd there because we're looking for Scott Kraniak, and he doesn't appear to be here, but Mr. Grum I recognize.
Thank you. Thank you to the board for allowing this presentation. For those of you who don't know me, I am Scott Kraniak, Director of Safety and Security for the school district. I'm retired from Lake Forest Police Department with 26 years. I came here from being a school resource officer, and when I retired, I was fortunate enough to come on board as your Director of Safety and Security. Ben Grum is our newest school resource officer. We thought it's important that everybody should know who he is, and it's really a unique situation with Officer Grum because he's been on the police department about 8 years, but he's also an alumni from Lake Forest High School, which I think is really a great opportunity for both the school district as well as the police department. It's essential to bridge that gap between officers and students and faculty and parents. It's a tough job. I remember dealing with it when I was there, and it's not an easy thing to do. So Officer Grum has hit the ground running with us for the start of this year. I'd like to publicly thank Officer Brett Marquette, who left the school resource officer's position in June after graduation. He's back on patrol, soon to be promoted from what I understand. So he served us well for the last 4 years as well. So. All right, if you weren't around during the construction time and all the stuff we went through with the referendum and the new commons and all the new things we added, we also added some pretty cool features, the hardware of what I like to call safety and security. On your left are what we call rescue assistance buttons. All the new stair towers, that includes the two at the south end of the building as well as the one in the center of the building, have these installed on every floor. And what's unique about these is that these towers are really rated for a burn time of about 3 hours. So they're very solid. So if you had an individual that had special needs and a teacher or an aide could get them in that, if they couldn't get them down the stairs because we can't use the elevators in some of these emergencies, they can hit that button. And what it does is it tells the fire department when they respond that there's somebody in that tower that needs assistance. And they can communicate with them by the panel outside the library. So it's a unique feature. Most people don't know we have them, but it was a nice addition to have. The ones on the right are in every room with a door. These are our emergency call buttons. The red button is for an emergencies. They've worked well. I mean, we've had several instances where maybe a kid gets ill or sick in a classroom. A teacher, instead of trying to remember to call the nurse or the main office, can hit that button, and it rings on any one of 5 different phones that we have stationed throughout the building. So it's usually staffed by a secretarial staff or something. So we can respond immediately to that. All our rooms also, since construction, the phones are 911 capable. So a teacher can dial 911 and get a direct line right to the police department. On the left is our key fob system. We put those on 6 different doors now. As you know, the doors are locked all day long, and the way to gain access in and out of the school, teachers all have key fobs. So it's kind of nice because it keeps track of things. It allows us to be more secure than maybe in years past. On the right, obviously, are the AEDs, the defibrillators. They're all over the building right now. We have about 8 of them. And obviously, those are always good to have. That, and then in the completion of last year, the thing that took the most time was this emergency crisis and response plan. What's unique about this is that it was a corroboration between the Lake Forest Fire Department, Lake Forest Police Department, and Lake Forest High School. And the one we had was just, it had to be changed. And this is what we call NIMS compliant, which is a National Incident Management System. So this follows basically what the federal government has set out as far as how to manage emergencies, whether it's chemical spills, bomb threats, active shooters, fires. It could be an emergency in the neighborhood. The thing is that everybody's on the same page. Where it used to be, police had their way of doing it, fire departments had their way of doing it, and we had our own way of doing it. Now we're all on the same page. This also allows you, if there were federal grant money available for safety and security, without having a plan in place that's NIMS compliant, you wouldn't be eligible for that grant money. So we redid this last year, and it took about 8 months to complete. You've probably seen these little guys all over the building. We have approximately 135 cameras. Some of our initiatives, though, is as you understand with technology, it's like anything else. These cameras were installed when we were doing the construction. They have a shelf life of about 8 to 10 years, and we have a lot of them. So one of the tech people, Brad Belenek, and I started putting a spreadsheet together as far as replacing and adding more cameras, several a year at least for a while, because otherwise you're going to get hit with, if they all started to go at once, would be quite expensive. These cameras work well. We do not have anybody staffing these. It's not like I sit there all day and watch cameras, but they're a great investigative tool. I've helped kids find laptops, phones, backpacks, you name it. Usually I can trace it back to that maybe it wasn't stolen, that maybe they left it in the commons where most stuff ends up. So. Some of our other initiatives is we're looking at a visitor management system. We're surveying other schools right now. Ben's been instrumental with me on that. What I mean by a visitor management system is like the swipe card system where you swipe your driver's license. There's several different ones out there. There's a company called Raptor that's very popular, Lobby Guard, things like that. I think it could serve some other purposes as well. And our latest, you've probably heard of it, is the Crisis Goal mobile app, which basically it takes this and puts it into your mobile device. Androids, smartphones, iPhones, tablets, laptops, anything that you would have, it makes it accessible to all our teachers, which we're going to start rolling this out in the next 2 weeks. It's really neat because these things are great, but not everybody's going to sit around and read these or have them in their room or on their desk. They can get it through a phone, and what's nice is with the phone is that even if there's, it doesn't take up any data, it doesn't cost the teacher anything or any staff member. Police department would have it as well. The officers would have it on their phones in the car, so if there was an emergency, they would probably be responding before the 911 dispatch went out. So it's a great tool that I'm really excited about for this coming year. This is, Mr. Mormon, you can't play in this game because you've seen this before. The why we do this, and I've given many presentations on safety and security, and I always ask this question, that what is it, the first tragedy in a school that you might remember? Is it Columbine? Is it Lori Dan and Winnetka? I was a police officer, so I remember Lori Dan as the first one. That's the one that sticks out. Most people remember Jonesboro or Columbine or obviously Sandy Hook. But when you look at these dates, you know, what about these other ones? And I think it's history that shows us that this is not a trend that's probably going to go away anytime soon. I mean, the worst one was in 1927 in Bath, Michigan, where 33 students were blown up and 5 adults because a man didn't like taxes. So as you see this and it goes on, you'll notice that since Sandy Hook, you know, we've had another 63 school shootings from 27 to 12, and we've had 74 since Sandy Hook. So we can't stop with safety and security. We have to constantly make changes and level our layers of security. So not to be a downer about the past, but that's the stuff that I collect and the data that always keeps me interested in why we're doing what we do. So, did you have anything to add, Officer Grum? I figured. I knew he would do that to me. Yeah. Any questions?
I just quick comment and then some questions. So I had the privilege to sit through a safety update in conjunction with District 67 earlier in the summer. And I didn't know half of this stuff, which was a little bit embarrassing, but really reassuring as a parent to know that this exists at the school. And I quickly reached out to the superintendent and to Mr. Markinson about, I think it's important that we just have a quick update, because I think the general public, those of you that are at home, may not be aware of some of this stuff either. And I don't even think people know that we have a director of security. And Ben, you're the new student, or, resource officer. So I think it's great that you're here in person, and thanks for making the time. My one question is, if we did something differently at this point that you think would help us, and obviously we all know the horrors of some of these real tragic situations, what's the one thing that we should probably be most conscious about, or one thing that we want to be thinking about, where we can support you as a board, or we can help you as a parent community? What would it be?
Well, there's several things. It's hard to answer that with one. Training is certainly an important part of any emergency plan. It has to be redundant. When we are police officers trained to do certain things a certain way repetitively for one reason, so that you don't have to think about it. And I think that as a district, or both districts, at some point we really need to sit down and do a round table or a tabletop type of exercise going through an emergency, just so that everybody understands the roles that they play. Because this is an incident command structure. So everybody in here has a certain role that they have to play. Mr. Simic might be here at West Campus. If something happens at East Campus, I guarantee you he's not going to get there. There's no way, because when police and fire get there, they're going to take over. So he has to understand his role, and I'm sure he does, because he's been doing this for a long time. But what he's going to do from here, what Dr. Holland will have to do over there, and we all have roles in it. Training is one. As far as a more of a, the fun stuff, or a hardware type of thing, I would say that, a visitor management system is something that I would like to see in the future. We would have to make a few changes, I think, the way the building is structured, but that would be, one of the tops of my wish list, per se.
Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, one other question, and I mentioned it to you before. We have handicap parking at the south end by the Raymond Moore Auditorium, and then also at the north end. But once the doors are locked during the day, there's no access. So, and there was talk we were going to put in basically the notification system where people could ring a buzzer to get in. We don't have that, so really, for all practical purposes, the handicap spots are pretty much useless. Then we did have one spot right in front of the school for one day, and then it got removed. And I talked to Glassa. They're going to make a proposal that spot be put back in, because not everybody like myself, I don't want it for me because I'm not there every day, but we do need a handicap spot in the front of the school, and we also need to make those spots at the south and north end accessible somehow. Have you looked into how you're going to do that?
We have the 3 handicap spots in front of the library entrance, and there's the ramp there. We have 4 in front of the auditorium with the ramp there, and we do have the A-phone system outside the auditorium door, so if you push that, it will ring in the greeter's office and she can buzz you in from there. We have 4 in the south lot, and we have 4 in the back of the building where there's a ramp as well. The only thing that I would caution is that, and I don't know all of ADA's rules, but if we did that, would we have to cut out some of the island? Because I think other people visiting, if they expect that that's a handicap accessible spot, that the front door is handicap accessible as well. So that would be the only thing that I would caution on, but I would have no objections to it by any means.
Yeah, it's not really a question of objections. It's how you say, there's a buzzer system at the south end, and I don't think there's anything at the other 2 points.
There is not.
So it really makes them pretty inaccessible.
On that point, in order for the spots by the library to work, we have to have a communication system of some kind down there. And do we have that now?
We do not. The A-phone is only on the loading dock and on the auditorium entrance. But that's where we have most of the handicap parking, is by the auditorium side, because we have several in that south lot right there as you pull in, and then we have the 4 in front of the auditorium. if we were going to do that, we could add an A phone, which is just an outside phone is what it is with a camera, so that people can see when they're buzzing, that the greeter can buzz that person in, and they can see who it is.
Yeah, that certainly is a need by the auditorium. I don't want to try to solve all the problems here. I've been in contact with Carol White, and then she's worked with people regarding the ability to have the front door be an ADA entrance, and I think it might depend on who we ask on that one, because what information I got back was that you can't use that because there's not a ramp there, and absent a ramp, you have to find other places where there is complete access. So I don't think we're done with this. The phone by the auditorium is without any question a priority for us, I think. So that's good.
Thank you.
And I have a comment also. I really, Scott, I really appreciate you setting the bar on the school resource officer so high. I think it's a good thing. I think you did a great job there. And then Ben, it's really nice to have an alumnus in our midst and in our school. Particularly, you've got 6 brothers that went through there too, so there's real skin in the game in the Grum family. But it's really a great thing. It's an investment that I think is easily taken for granted, that the school and the community want to have a school resource officer, a liaison officer, and that we've got you here as much time as we do. So it's welcome, and also we're really, really pleased and happy to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you guys are excited about me being here, and I'm hoping to do some really good things and kind of expand my role and be a little bit more involved in all aspects of the school in the years to come. So.
Thank you.
We held our first meeting of the year on September 2nd, and as it was a new group, we took the opportunity to talk about our goals for the committee. And generally, the administration is using the Education Committee as an opportunity to kind of vet some new ideas about the curriculum and education. And the board members and community members were pretty much of one voice in agreeing and hoping that the committee can ensure high-quality education. And also, everybody was kind of unanimous in hoping to ensure strong mentoring for our students within the building, that every student really has a good connection with a teacher or other adult in the building. So then we heard from Assistant Superintendent Rogers, who talked about some of the enhancements to the Media Resource Center and goal of expanding the telecom facility into it. And we heard about Steve Douglas's Apple Distinguished Educator Award, which I looked up later as a very, very impressive feat, and his video was worth looking at. And we also heard about the rollout of the maker space, which will be used for a lot of different classes, robotics, material science. Probably the most exciting initiative, I think, is the free ACT class that Dr. Hollins developed and told us about the plans for this Saturday morning class to start very, very soon. So I know I told my kid he's signing up, and hopefully they'll have a good turn up. We also heard about the plans for the school day committee that Superintendent Simic already alluded to, that is going to hold its first meeting this week and involve the administrators and the teachers, talking about ways to change the schedule in a way that'll provide more supports for students and more opportunities for teachers' professional development. So there was a lot more that Mr. Rogers wanted to present to us, so we agreed to hold another meeting in October. We weren't going to meet again till November, but we'll have an additional meeting.
Yeah, no, there was no finance and operations meeting. It's held next Wednesday, the 16th. It'll be here at West Campus, beginning at 7:30 a.m. So that's our first meeting for the year.
Now move on to the budget. It says here that I'm supposed to ask for a motion to adopt the FY, or I'm sorry, the 2015-2016 budget. I'll entertain a motion in a second, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. If there are any questions or comments for Mr. Ellis or Mr. Simmons. So, first, we have a motion to adopt the 2015-2016 budget.
So motioned.
Second.
We have a roll call vote. Or wait, no, first we're going to ask a question. Are there any questions on the FY 16 budget? I have. You covered a couple of them in your presentation. Mr. Elvis, we talked about the effects of the tax cap. And your thoughts on where you might fall out with everything going on in Springfield and the state aid. The bottom line is, the good and the bad is, as I understand it, is not as affected by potential cuts in state aid directly because we're so heavily dependent on property taxes.
That's correct. We get about 7% of our revenue, I believe, from state sources. You go around the state, it varies dramatically. So a 2-year property tax freeze would have a big impact on us, as it would most school districts on the North Shore. But a cut in the categorical payments would not hit us proportionately as much as it would some other districts. Because we don't know, we think it's pie in the sky to assume, because nothing's been communicated, that nothing will happen, but we don't know what that will be. So we made some assumptions, and then we'll assess when we get a better plan. But as we keep hearing things, it keeps getting pushed back. You know, when they project a deal might get done, it could be in the next calendar year.
The other thing I noticed in the form that was in our budget packet, there's a statement there that said this is a balanced budget or something. What you presented tonight showed excess of expenditures over revenues. Can you explain that again? I think you did it last time.
Ms. Davis and I are smiling because we had this conversation earlier. It depends how you define deficit. You know, and what was your quote? It depends what is. I believe the state. I believe the state. The fact that we're using budget balance, they would consider it a balanced budget. So we're not into early tax warrants, and so we're using our reserves, which periodically you need to do.
Yeah, I think I mean, just for the community that may be watching that maybe didn't understand that, there clearly is a deficit of, what do we have, 987,000 for this fiscal year, but because of the budget reserves that exist, we're not really in deficit spending, correct? So we went from, last year was roughly, we had about a 17% budget reserve. With the deficit that we have for this fiscal year, that's going to drop to 15. Our goal is to stay above 10. So we're in a fairly good spot. And those of you that may have been paying attention in our June, I think, meeting, you know, one of the things, this has been planned for. And we've seen this coming, and we owe some credit to some prior boards who, you know, developed a path to black when we really went through the recession in 2008. That really saw what was happening, and it's been fairly predictable. I originally had a tremendous amount of heartburn, as Alan knows, and some of you sitting at this table know, because it wasn't anything I was overly excited to sign up for. But when you walk through and you kind of see and follow the cadence that the finance team has done, and how they've managed through some of the expected and non-expected expenditures, I had a much more confident feeling that said, okay, we get this. It's also important to note that $600,000 of it is leading edge initiative in terms of equipment that we as a board signed up for and committed to a year ago over about a 5-year period of time in terms of helping to change the way our students learn and our teachers teach. So there are some big items within that budget that are really driving it short term for a year, but feel very confident that there are really no big surprises. Springfield can always change that for us depending on what happens, but generally speaking, I think we're in a pretty good spot.
More comment than a question. Shared services is something unique to District 67 and 115, and it works very well. I mean, there are a lot of benefits to both districts. My comment or challenge is I'd like to challenge the administration to continue to look for new ways to more effectively share services and reduce costs, and turn as much of our tax revenues into having a positive effect on the students at Lake Forest High School. So no question buried in a comment and a challenge that I think they've heard before. So we have a motion on the table to approve the 2015-2016 budget. May I have a roll call vote?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon? Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mrs. Carlin? Aye. Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Marcus?
Aye. The next thing is something we were deficient in acknowledging Dave Schreiber, our outgoing board member. He can't be watching at home, but I hope he's watching online because I have a resolution. I doubt he's watching. I seriously hope he's not watching online. Dave moved to Colorado. But anyway, bear with me as I read this resolution for Dave. Whereas Dave Schreiber has faithfully served Lake Forest High School and its students with dedication as a member of the Board of Education of Lake Forest High School District 115 from 2013 to 2015, and whereas during his tenure, he served as vice president of the board from 2014 to 2015 and provided sound leadership and diplomacy, and whereas he was a member of the Education Committee from 2013 to 2014 and provided oversight to major district educational initiatives, new programs, and made recommendations to the Board of Education on major topics or matters related to curriculum and instruction. And whereas he served on the Finance and Operations Committee from 2014 to 2015 and provided sound leadership and ensured oversight to all major district revenues, expenditures, and investment policies through challenging financial times, and provided a community perspective, direction, and oversight of district operations in the areas of transportation, building and grounds, and food service. And whereas he was a member of the Joint Shared Services Committee from 2014 to 2015 and provided top quality education in a financially responsible manner to the children of both Lake Forest School District 67 and Lake Forest High School District 115. And whereas his commitment to his responsibilities as a board member, thoughtful preparation, and his dedication to the student, staff, and community of District 115 are appreciated by his fellow board members and the District 115 community that he has served. Now be it resolved that the Board of Education of Lake Forest High School District 115 does express for itself, as well as the parents, students, staff, faculty, and the citizens of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, and Knollwood, its sincere appreciation and gratitude to Dave Schreiber for all he has done to advance the quality of education in our communities. Adopted this 8th day of September 2015. Thank you, Dave. May I have a motion to adopt the outgoing board member resolution?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education adopt the outgoing board member resolution.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote?
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Mrs. Kryling?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
John's making, aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
I consider voting against that just
Yeah,
for a
that's what
brief
John-
moment, just in case Mr. Schreiber is watching at home.
The next issue up for review is an NSSED issue on the withdrawal of School District 109, our neighboring district in Deerfield or Highland Park, from NSSED. Is there some discussion on that first, or Mr. Mormon, do you want to address that, or Mr. Simic?
Yeah, I'll lead into it, and then I think the star of the show today is going to be Mr. Mormon. This is a request from District 109 to withdraw, and the question before us is really to determine whether or not District 109 has the ability to service the students in its district. They held 2 different meetings, one a morning meeting and one an evening meeting, to answer any questions that any of the other participants in the co-op might have for them. And one of the things I want to say I really appreciate in the course of a couple different conversations with Mr. Moorman, there's a great deal of time that frankly none of us have seen that he has spent working on this, and also a good deal of passion about the care and the effort that has gone into his observations that he'll provide for the board today. So this is time that people don't see, but he really does have a great understanding of many of the nuances and finer points of this that will add value to the board's decision making.
Well, thanks for that nice stroking, or whatever you want to call it. Just as a little background, the Northern Suburban Special Ed District came into play many years ago. It's combined of 18 local school districts that all participate in a consortium. It's worked quite well. But the one thing we always look at, well, first, taking care of the needs of especially special needs students. In my mind, they come first because they need our help probably more than any other constituency that we serve. That in the case of District 109, and a lot of other districts are doing, such as ours, we're doing a lot more to, one of the goals is to use the least restrictive environment. It used to be everybody would get on the short bus and, you'd never see them again. And I don't know if somebody's going to beat me up with that characterization, but we've really realized that the best way to, if we can, to embrace and keep the students in their home district, and that's what's considered, the least restrictive environment. District 109 is a district very much like ourselves. It's Deerfield. They've done a lot to bring the students back into the district, get them along with their peers, which is really important, that they can stay at home in their home school, stay with their friends. And as it was last year, District 109 had 6 students participating in NSSED, and they were contributing approximately $105,000 to the budget, which is actually very close to what Lake Forest is now, because we're doing a lot more to bring students back into the district. And at this point, I would recommend that we vote to allow them to leave the consortium. It's not, financially, it's not going to hurt the district, because actually 2 teachers are going to go to Deerfield with the students, and so it's going to be basically cost neutral for the consortium, so there's no concern. It will now be a consortium of 17 districts. And Lake Forest, if people aren't aware, looked at it last year, with us leaving the consortium also. We elected to continue, but to keep our options open and to keep basically an open mind about going forward. And as it stands, for us to vote to allow them to leave, it doesn't change the fact they're going to leave regardless. It just means there's 2 different pathways. If all 17 districts approve, then they basically just sign out. Next July they'll be on their own. If even one district says they have reservations and votes no, then it's just a more convoluted process where it goes through the regional superintendent and then the state superintendent. But they still will be leaving. It's just a lot more hoops. And the concern is to make sure that the kids are going to be taken care of. Because nobody wants a situation where the kids fall through the cracks. The superintendent of NSSED agrees that all the current students will be adequately supported His concern is that if a special case comes up, that they may not have the resources to take care of them, in which case they would have to, outsource. But that's a situation that we would all have to do, and even NSSCD would potentially have to do. So it's my recommendation that the board vote to allow District 109 to leave the consortium.
How many students do we have? About the same number, 6?
I think we have actually 8 or 9. But we, also have been bringing much more in-house.
May I have a motion to adopt the resolution for, well, that's all I'll say. May I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education of Lake Forest Community High School District 115 adopt the resolution for the consensual withdrawal of Deerfield Public High School District 109 from the North Suburban Special Education District.
Second. Mr. Mormon? May I have a roll call, Madam Clerk?
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Powers?
Aye.
Mrs. Skreiling?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye. The next item on our agenda, even though we just started this school year, is the 2016-2017 school calendar. Always subject to change. It was put before us for review. All of you have had a chance to take a look at this. Any comments or questions on the school calendar? If not, may I have a motion?
Just a quick question. I did notice that it seems like Christmas is getting earlier and earlier. And,
But it's not December 25th?
It's still on the 20th.
Christmas break?
Well, the break starts now actually on the 16th, and school resumes on the 3rd. And it just seems like it is getting earlier. And I was wondering how this aligns with the colleges also, because, I know we're trying to make sure we align with 65 and 67. And then, and we start back on the 3rd. And by the way, just proposed school calendar, at one point it says return to school on the 2nd. So one has to be corrected. It's either the 2nd or the 3rd.
Yeah, Mr. Rogers?
Sure. So the calendar, for your proposed calendar. Okay, I'll just leave it go. Okay. This one, I guess you don't press the button. That's the trick. So, thank you. So the proposed calendar, actually, yeah, it has a little earlier time before the winter break. And a lot of that is just dictated into how the calendar falls, and that rotates. But it pretty much represents the standard calendar we would be looking at any given year. As Mr. Markison pointed out, the calendar is subject to change. And one of the things that we may be looking at as we start to enter in an exciting process looking at the new school day, that process may inform us wanting to make a change at a later date in terms of the calendar. So I think we want to be open, flexible, and positive in terms of it. But I also think it's a timely issue. We want to get this calendar out there for families, for planning purposes, around our academic calendar as well. I also would like to let you know that throughout this process, we were able to solicit and receive feedback from our important stakeholders, APT, LFEA, as well as aligning the calendar to 67 and 65.
I have.
Well, no, I know there's, I'm just curious because it seems like I said, no, Christmas hasn't been moved. But we are starting very early and we're back to school on the 3rd. And while we did apparently coordinate with 65 and 67, did we look at School of St. Mary in the academy and the other schools in the area that families are mixed up in? I don't mean that in a bad way.
Okay.
Mr. Rogers, I had a quick question. I know in the past we've discussed trying to have exams before Christmas holiday or holiday break. Is that still a thought that's being tossed around, or?
I think it is. I think we've had some really great conversations within our leadership team, with our faculty, with our parents as well. So I think that's one of the things we may look to in the future. As a matter of fact, there's a number of neighboring districts and districts in the northern Illinois area who are now looking at modified types of calendars that would allow that. And there's really three ways that that can happen. One is simply starting earlier to allow for the number of days to have for a semester to occur before the winter break. That's the first way. The second way would be to have uneven semesters. So there's districts, for instance, the Antioch district, which has uneven semesters. And so we have an uneven semester, but theirs is even more so. So you could do it that as well. And then the third way would be to be creative about your assessment schedule. So this notion that, hey, we've got to take the last few days to do our final exams, that's something that's kind of been part and parcel of how we've done business, but that's certainly something we can look at, and we've had some creative conversations. So I think in the future, there are some positive benefits in doing something like that, particularly having a true break, having that balance. And so that's one of the things that you find with the college schedule that people like. And maybe even aligning it to when kids get out of college is something as well. Yes.
Mr. What does that mean when you say that last option, being creative about not having the last 3 days be the what?
Right. So we could have developed a schedule where the last 5 days of the semester would have been actually after the winter break. So what we could have done, or the last 4 days perhaps, what we could have done is we could have held exams prior to the winter break. When the students came back from the winter break, we could have done a review of the exams, have kids go over the final exams. We could have had project-based activities. We could have simply went on to the next unit, as many of our school classes actually are year-long classes.
So I have no memory. Did we have a motion on the table to approve the school calendar? No.
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the 2016-2017 calendar as presented.
Second.
Roll call vote, Madam Clerk?
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mrs. Kreiling?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item up for review is a policy on the use of credit and procurement cards. This is the first reading. Is there any discussion on this policy? Or would we just like to go ahead with a motion? Mr. Mormon, is there anything you'd like to say about it? Or?
I'd actually like to have Mr. Albus.
Mr. Albus?
This policy does align us with the District 67, but if you'd like to go into it in a little greater detail.
We're having some microphone problems over at the table there, so I thought I'd walk over here. I'll address them both. The first one, which policy was up first?
Procurement cards.
Okay. Mr. Powers pointed out, he had asked some questions regarding the administration of this policy. And as we talked about it, the question came up about Mr. Simick's procurement card and who approves those. And I review them each month. But Mr. Powers pointed out the policy states that cards are reviewed and approved by someone other than the cardholder or someone under the cardholder's supervision. Well, that practice is very typical in school districts, to have the business official look at the superintendent, or as we found in surveying districts, in some districts, nobody reviews it, which is not a good practice. As we talked about that, though, Mr. Powers said, we really should make our policy mimic our practice, or our practice should adhere to the policy. So we talked with our auditor, and we had some more conversation, and this is what we came up with. We presented this at a joint policy meeting, and the outcomes are in your packet in red. I'll summarize them for anybody watching this meeting. Purchases made by the superintendent shall be processed with the monthly statements. And the reason we do that is to make sure that we have a timely payment of the invoice that comes in. But copies of the monthly statements and receipts will be provided to the board president and the chair of the district finance committee for review. So there is some independent oversight on that going forward. The other two things we added were that on a monthly basis, the board will be provided usage reports. You have those in your packet now, but in our meetings, we talked about an internal document we use that actually assigns names to all the different purchases. So I think the conversation would be that it would help you as a board member when you see a certain name with an associated cost, and that may say, okay, that makes a lot of sense to me, as opposed to just a vendor being listed out in an account. And I believe our goal was to include that in your packet tonight, so you might have two different usage reports. And then finally, on an annual basis in September, the board will be provided a list of individual card holders and their current credit limits. The caveat on that is during the course of the year, that can change. Mr. Dubose, for example, when we're in gearing up for a school year and purchasing a lot of equipment, we may adjust his credit limit up so that we can process it through procurement cards and receive a rebate back, but we won't leave it there all year. So they can go up and down, but September is a good time, I think, a good snapshot of who has cards and what are typical spending limits. If there's no questions on 455, yes?
I have two questions. The first is, there was also the addition of the language "or agents" at the very beginning, and I was wondering,
I'm sorry. Thank
can you
you.
give a definition, an example of what an agent would be?
Mr. Cornelius is retired and we contract for IT services, and Mrs. Whipple is with Whipple Communications, and we contract with her. So they're agents of the school districts.
And then my second question is, can you describe how this, how the credit card usage is then subject to audit? How does that get audited? I understand that it's reported, but then I presume there's also spot checking of.
Just like we would do with purchase orders that go through the district. So I don't know what the threshold volume is, but the auditors will take it and they'll look through, and they'll look for the same type things we look for on a monthly basis. Is there documentation? Are there multiple signatures? What type of account code is being used?
Sorry, one last question. Is there a threshold difference between when a purchase order has to be used versus the credit card?
No. Years ago, the framework of this is a procurement card is much more efficient from a financial standpoint to utilize than a purchase order. And it really makes sense when you stop and talk through all the people who touch a purchase order and all the times they touch it as it goes through. In school districts, most of your purchases are a couple $100s. Purchase orders can cost, and this is going back probably 10 or 15 years at the time, it was estimated by Deloitte & Touche to be about $200 to process a PO. So to spend $200 acquiring something that might cost $100 didn't seem to make a lot of sense. So many districts have gone to procurement cards, and we use them, and I think we use them pretty efficiently, especially with the rebates that we get back on it.
I just wanted to throw in real quick, the genesis of this idea, I was stuck on an airplane reading all the horror stories about College of DuPage and some of the spending that had taken place in years past. And so it really begged the question, hey, what do we do? Because I didn't even know. And so when we dug into it, we realized a few of these inconsistencies between policy and practice. The process, the superintendent does a fabulous job in terms of managing expenses, processing them, leading the team, managing the team. So there's no issues there. So I want the public to be, very aware of the fact that finances are run very cleanly here, but we did notice the fact that, hey, wait a minute, we either need to change the policy or change our behavior. And we wanted to make sure that we took some things into effect in order to make those adjustments and make sure there's oversight there on a regular basis. And that's exactly what we've done through the policy committee and Ted's support.
On policy 460, the genesis of that goes back to last spring, and Mr. Dubose was gearing up to buy the one-to-one devices because they have to be ordered, they have to come in, they have to be imaged, inventoried to be distributed to students when they come in for registration. Well, that was in the spring, so that's before this fiscal year. So the question was, do we have the authority to go ahead and order those? So we went back and looked at last year when we started the program and said, how did we present that to the board? Was that a multi-year program, or was that, the 1 year by itself? And it was only the 1 year by itself. So that was an issue. But then also reading through the policy, we came to the realization that the way this is worded through press, we really had no authority to spend any money from July until tonight when you adopted the budget. So we really had no authority to pay the electric bill. Now, this is very common in most school districts, and it's just the cycle of things. Most districts adopt their budgets in September. Many districts subscribe to this service. I think the wording we've put in would improve this service, and we'll share it back. But I pulled back on from some of my early experience when I worked at Naperville. And years ago, they used to pass a resolution that said the administration is authorized to spend up to, and I think in that case, it was 40% of the prior year budget. As we talked about it in committee, 25% seems more than adequate. 25% makes sense with it's a quarter of the year. This doesn't give anybody any more authority to spend any more money, because the ultimate control here is ultimately the budget. So if they spend it all in August, that may be okay, but they're still controlled by whatever the budget amount is going to be. The other thing in there was the old language said all contracts shall be approved by the board. Well, one of the things that we talked about in the Finance and Ops Committee, this summer I signed a contract to do weeding at the retention pond up at North for $800. They would come in 3 times and do the weeding. And in part because when we got the proposal and it was sent to me, I looked at the first page that had a price quote. I didn't notice the second page with terms and conditions on it. But that's a contract, and we want to be in compliance. But to stop in July and for an $800 expense and not bring that forth until September isn't efficient operationally for us. So we actually had some conversations with our law firm on this and worked through some of this and tied it to the $25,000 threshold that goes with bids. I think there's some logic, some natural logic there. So that's the change in blue in the first paragraph under standards for purchasing and contracting. Any questions on this policy?
Make a motion about the credit and procurement card policy change?
Yeah, I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve policy 4:55, use of credit card and procurement cards on first reading.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Need a roll call vote on this?
Mrs. Skryling?
Aye.
Mr. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye. Thank you. Next, the purchases and contract policy, first reading.
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve policy 460, purchases and contracts on first reading.
Second.
Second.
Roll call vote, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mrs. Skryling?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Motion passes.
The consent agenda is our human resources report. I'd just like to make a couple of comments and maybe some questions. This is a jam-packed report, a little more jam-packed than our normal monthly reports, and it's primarily because of the start of the new school year. Mr. Simic and I had a conversation. There are some hires on here where the folks have already started working. It's just the way of the world. We didn't have an August meeting. There was no way for us to approve this before they needed to be hired. So some of these hires are an after-the-fact hire, which I'm told is consistent with prior September board meetings, but I encourage the administration and everybody to try and get ahead of this as much as you can before the school year starts and present this to the board before the people start. Any other comments on that, Mr. Simic? That
No, in looking at the HR report, I mean, one of the reasons for that at the end of the packet, you see how many resignations we get. If we had a meeting in July, or even if we had a meeting in mid-August, we have a number of resignations that come in at the end of the middle of the month or the end of the month. And so in order to not hold the teaching of kids up, this is how it goes. So we would have fewer if we had an August meeting, but it's inevitable. And it's every month. Sometimes you hire people in the middle of the year as well. So we get them on there in the most timely manner that we can. But if we really do want to focus on having the best people in front of the kids, this is how the business has to get done. So it is unusual, probably in some industries, to do this.
I noticed a few things as well. One would be the dates associated with some of the resignations that, just generally speaking, as a business guy, I think is challenging for people to try to lead and hire. So when you make a decision you're going to leave the district, and you could do it before the end of August, that might be helpful. So just for somebody out there listening that may want to think about that. I also noticed it seemed to be very popular to resign by email, which is a pet peeve that I have as a business guy, so it may not be worth anything at all, but it's also another thing that I've noticed, as opposed to a little bit more formal professional process than just a quick email out the door. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
I thought that was just the confirmation, just so we had something in writing, but that was actually a wow, resignation via email. Okay. So any other questions or comments on the HR report?
I have a question. Could somebody explain how the coaching stipends are determined? Because there's a lot of disparity, say, when the JV head boys soccer coach makes $3,000 more than the JV head girls tennis coach, and just interested in how those decisions are made.
I have no idea on that one.
No, Lori.
That's what I was going to say, but I just didn't want to say.
It's a percentage of their salary, which is based on, isn't it, Jen? Or percentage of base.
And you're smart to notice it. It comes up frequently, and we've had some discussions with Tim Burkhalter in the past as to trying to really understand what that looks like, and more importantly, what's the perceived aspect when people see that. It's hard to dig into, so we're going to continue to have those conversations.
I mean, because my understanding is with Title IX, you have to have equal resources going to girls' teams and boys' teams, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of attention paid to ensuring Title IX is properly enforced.
I had one other question. In most cases, you could tell if somebody was assigned as a 1.0 FTE, for instance. You could do the math and figure out what the cap on the budget was for their compensation. But to the extent that you have folks who are being approved on an hourly basis, is it their supervisor then who has an overall budget cap on how many hours they can work, if that's not expressed?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're not going to touch that, are you? Uh-huh. I was just going for my glasses trick.
And to tag on to Sally's question, the PT where current teachers are given $32.85 for one period, they're going to teach during their free period?
Right. That rate that you're referring to is the in-staffing rate. So that's for our teachers who sub during a planning period or their lunch. As far as that rate, that hourly rate, there is a range, and we look at education and experience when placing them within that range. If you're looking at a salary for a teaching assistant.
I'm asking the question, if you have someone who's being paid an hourly rate, but I'm not able to see what the cap is on how many hours they're able to work. How does that get managed?
It's seven out. I'll look to my seven. Mhm.
It's not worth belaboring it. I guess I was looking, for instance, at the athletic department hires. There are a lot of hourly
For swimming.
positions. So is that just manage the overall number of employees working hourly rates is just managed within an overall budget?
It is. It's that part. Is it swimming that you're looking at, or was it something
Yeah,
else?
some are lifeguards, right? So they'll be there in the morning, or when there's other community type involvements in swimming, I think is when it comes into
Filmers.
play.
I don't
but-
know what a filmer is, but
Yeah, those would be set hours based on the need for the particular job. So for lifeguarding, again, it's certain hours. For filming, it would be for events, versus a teaching assistant where it would be that 7.5-hour day.
that's what I'm asking.
There you
Okay,
go.
thanks.
Lori, one last question. What is a long-term, like, substitute math teacher as opposed to a teacher?
Okay. We have really 3 different rates for our subs. One would be that in-staffing rate that we spoke about earlier, which is our internal teachers subbing for each other. Another is just a regular sub, and there's a daily rate and a per period rate. And then if someone is in a position for a long period of time, for instance, we have a teacher right now who's on maternity leave. So there are some people that are sharing her position, and it's a long-term position. So you're paid a higher rate if you're going to be there for multiple days, because you're taking over the classroom and doing the planning and the instruction, versus a daily rate where you're just, dropping in and covering.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions on the HR report? If not, may I have a motion? Anybody? Bueller?
I
Bueller?
move
Anybody?
that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the Human Resources Report as presented.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Mr. Powers?
Aye.
Mrs. Kreiling?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Motion passes.
We have a number of items on the consent agenda, and I think the process is that if anybody has a comment on any of the items, we could pull these out. I just had a general comment that I've discussed with Mr. Simic on some of these items, namely the Northern Trust Bank resolution and the approval of recognition of schools application. It would just be helpful to the board, to me, if there were some sort of intro as to why we were reviewing this and approving this. When I saw the Northern Trust Bank resolution just sitting there in my board packet, I had to ask. So just a general intro, we need to open a new bank account for such and such a purpose would be helpful. I understand the purpose now. As well as the approval of recognition of schools application, which just looked like a state form to me. So I had some questions on the administrator teacher salary and benefits report that I would like to go over. How do we do that? Do we
Yep.
pull that out before we could just discuss it and then vote on it? Okay.
Yep.
It seemed to me that, I know that the administrator teacher salary and benefits report is a state requirement, a state report, but there were some people on there that I know, and there were some people on there that I don't. So I'm not sure how we split, if we put some people on the 67 report. I'm sorry, there were no people on the report that I didn't know. There were just some people not on the 115 report that I would have expected to be on the 115 report.
And following our conversation today, we had a discussion with, and Brittany may want to add some to this, depending on who holds the contract, with the exception of the superintendent. So, for example, on 115, you did not see Mrs. Hermes on there, because the 67 board holds her contract.
Okay.
With mine, you see I'm listed on each of them. With Mr. Albus, he would appear on 115.
Okay.
And so on. And it's a state it's a state form that you have to fill out in the way that they want that. And so I'm the only one that is designated for both.
Mr. Simic was correct. Per the state of Illinois, every district needs a superintendent. They don't recognize our shared service structure for the purpose of this report, except for Mr. Simic. So your home district, who you receive your paycheck from, your hiring district, is where you're reported.
May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items, including, do I need to read them all, Linda? Including disbursements, payrolls, and financial statements for July and August 2015, adoption of Northern Trust Bank resolution, approval of administrator teacher salary and benefits report, approval of long-term disability insurance contract, approval of release of executive session minutes February 2015 to June of 2015, approval of recognition of schools application, minutes of a regular meeting July 14th, 2015, minutes of an executive session July 14th, 2015, minutes of an executive session August 22nd, 2015, minutes of an executive session August 28th, 2015, minutes of an executive session August 29th, 2015, disposal of audio recordings February 11th, 2014. That's the motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Now, I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as eloquently presented by Mr. Markison.
May I have a second? Dave already gave it.
Second.
Good. Do we need a roll call vote? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Mr. Powers?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mrs. Kreiling?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye. We have FOIA requests from G. Michael Verdon, resident, Joseph W. Hart, commercial, and 2 FOIAs from Nancy Thorner, resident. Wednesday, September 9th is the open house at 6 p.m. Thursday, September 10th is a late start day. Starts at 9:50 a.m. Saturday, September 12th, Be True to Your School event at Ellowa Farms at 7 p.m. There's a football game September 11th that isn't on it's Navy night on September 11th. At home. Wednesday, September 16th is another late start day at 9:30 a.m., not 9:50. Thursday, September 17th is the freshman parent meeting at 10 a.m. Wednesday, September 30th is another late start day. Wow, 3 in a month. That's great. 9:30 a.m. Monday, October 12th is Columbus Day, no school, and our next Board of Education meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 13th at 6:30. 6:30. We're going to start earlier. Try and start earlier in this very room. So, may I have a motion to adjourn the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Adjourned. Thank you.